Music brings us together, even when we're apart. That's why we support Canadian musicians, festivals, and award shows. It's just one of the ways TD's Ready commitment helps build a more inclusive tomorrow.
Hey everyone, welcome to TD Halifax Jazz Festival Virtual and Vibrant 2020. This is Halifax Jazz Festival's online programming coming to you live from Halifax. We're very excited to be here today. Before we get started, I would just like to acknowledge that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people, and we need to respect Indigenous sovereignty. So we're very happy to be here today and like to just thank our sponsors, our title sponsor, the TD Bank Group. Also like to thank our government sponsors, the Government of Canada, the City of Halifax, Develop Nova Scotia, and the Province of Nova Scotia, as well as the Craig Foundation, Arts Nova Scotia, and the J.N.W. Murphy Foundation. We'd also like to thank our festival partners, Advocate Printing, Garrison, CTV, Giant 109, 1019, The Breeze 96.5, Mix 94.1, Mirror Image Media, as well as Dashboard Marketing. We've got lots of great programming throughout this month and into August as well. We've got 16 weeks of programming that we've been doing here. You can join us every Tuesday and Thursday in July. Tuesdays we have Canadian jazz interviews featuring conversations with leading Canadian jazz artists. As well on Thursdays we are going to continue our series of Jazzlabs. Next week we've got Dr. Henry Bishop talking about African drumming. And then the following Thursday to close out the series, we have Amy Brandon, great guitarist, talking about extending guitar effects. So really looking forward to those two Jazzlabs as well. Join us in August as we have our 3 nights of fantastic concerts that we're presenting via Facebook, YouTube, and all of our social media. So you're going to want to check that out. We've got 3 nights. First night we've got Electrojock Therapy in Krasnogorsk, followed by Corey Adams. And those are going to be taking place at 7 p.m. each night. And the following night we'll have, on the Friday night, we'll have Andre Fenton, great poet and author, collaborating with Sam Wilson, guitarist. And that's going to be followed by Easley Arsenault Stevenson. So another great night. And then closing out those performances, we're going to have a fantastic performance by Jamila, followed by a performance by drummer Jerry Granelli. So getting to today, we're here in the home of Ross Burns, who's a professional musician, performer, capoeira player, and teacher based in Halifax. And he's been studying and training in the Afro-Brazilian dance martial art form capoeira since 2003. He's a 4-time ECMA and 5-time Music Nova Scotia award winner. And he's also has led Mestre Azeitona's capoeira group Dendê Halifax since 2007. We're very excited to be here. Ross has got a whole slew of instruments, and he's going to give some background and some information about Brazilian percussion. So give a big round of virtual applause to Ross Burns, and also dog, Maisie.
Maisie the dog. Thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you, Andrew Jackson, for inviting me to be here, and also for putting together such a great program at the Halifax Jazz Festival in the strange circumstances, pivoting to coming to artists' living rooms instead of presenting a festival down at a festival site. Anyway, congratulations on all that work, and thank you for supporting music here in Halifax as usual. Very important to all of us musicians. So, welcome to my living room, and I hope I hope you have a good time here. Welcome to my home. Thank you, Ben, for being behind the scenes and and getting it all sorted out technically. And yeah, this is exciting. I'm excited to get a chance to share with you some of this stuff that I love, some of this music that I, mostly, the thing that I take most from it is this deep joy of playing music. That's something that I want to get across to everybody. And the importance of music and creativity in everybody's life is something we can talk about. It's not just something reserved for musicians, but I hope that one thing everyone can take away is some very accessible stuff. You can, in fact, you are a musician as well. It's not just me. It's not just those of us who are doing it professionally. Music is really for everybody, and it makes happy, healthy people. So I encourage everybody to pick up whatever musical direction in your life that you can and pursue it.
I should mention that if anyone has questions out there while we're doing this, if you have any questions during this, we'll be monitoring, and we can ask questions whenever you feel like it, and we'll bring them to Russ.
Definitely. I'm not so comfortable with just a monologue. I like any kind of input, any kind of questions would be great, because normally in a teaching or performing situation, there's some feedback, which is missing largely in this situation. I'm glad Andrew's here with me, because otherwise I'd feel very lonely. Thank you also, Maisie, for accompanying me. But yeah, there's a few things that I wanted to get across. I had a little list in mind. One is just the joy of playing music. One is the accessibility of it. Like, it's not a special thing just for music people. It's in fact it's just a human, I don't know, it's kind of like a birthright for all of us. We are all musicians, we are musical people, and everyone should embrace that. It makes lives happier and healthier. So definitely something to take away. And then also I think that it's important to talk about responsibility. I think that music carries a certain responsibility as well as bringing so much joy to the people who play it and the people who listen to it. But music is a cultural property, and so when you play music, you have a great responsibility to learn about the lineage, to understand the history and some of the context, all of the context of the music. And when you're playing and learning about music that's from a different culture than you grew up in, the responsibility is heightened to respect, to understand, to have a close relationship with the source, with your teachers, and to go above and beyond with how much you respect the lineage and the history, and how much energy you put into that side of it. It's not just learn some techniques and suddenly they're yours. You have to respect the lineage. So those are things I'd be fascinated to talk with people about it. I think it's very, very, very important. So joy, accessible, and responsibility. Those are kind of the themes that I was thinking about. All of that. But the other theme is this instrument. This is a pandero. A pandero is a very, very typical, it's like maybe the most emblematic percussion instrument of Brazilian music in some ways. And we can talk about why that is. But it's a fascinating and totally addictive instrument. I find it totally intoxicating. It's very, very fun to play. It presents a lot of possibilities, and it's connected to very deep history. And so this is what I want to show you guys today, the pandero. Maybe I should play it some first, and we can talk about it after. The pandero is basically a frame drum with a leather skin, sometimes plastic, but in this case leather, and it has tambourine-style jingles on it. And it comes in many shapes and forms, but in Brazil it has a very special playing technique, and hold it in one hand and strike it with the other, and I'll just demonstrate a little bit of that, and then we can take it from there. Pandero.
Awesome.
The dog is wagging her tail. It's like, that's the applause that we get. Yeah, thank you very much. So, Pandaro.
I have a couple questions regarding that.
Yeah.
So what you just played there, we're talking about Brazilian percussion, but Brazil, it's a place of over 1 billion people. So I'm just wondering, if the Pandaro is specific to any sort of specific region, or is it sort of found throughout, in your experience?
Yeah, great question. So there are, often when we think about cultural music, we think about a place, we think about India, we think about Brazil, we think about, wherever, America. We usually compress it and squish it into one, we think about a narrow thing. But of course, Brazil, hundreds of millions of people, a deep variety of folkloric music, and so the Pandaro participates differently in different regional musics, for sure. So there would be even different techniques for holding an instrument, for the exact playing technique, depending on exactly what you're playing and in what context, for sure. It's not just a one kind of size fits all. So it'll be very regionally different inside of Brazil. Brazil is a huge country, maybe the 5th largest country by area in the world, something like that. And so there's a great variety, totally. But one of the things that's interesting about this instrument that I was thinking about it, and I believe that why it's such an emblematic Brazilian instrument is that it has the properties of playing all of the sounds of a much larger band. So very simply, you have the possibility of making low and medium and high timbres all at the same time. Like for instance, many people think about samba as a very typical Brazilian music. We
do have some Samba Nova members listening right now.
Hey, Samba Nova, shout out. Yeah, many collaborations in the past, for sure. Been at parties and events and parades with Samba Nova, so hey, everybody from Samba Nova. There's a great example. So Samba Nova is a big samba band, like a drum corps, you might say in English, a batucada in Portuguese. There's many bass drums playing the low frequencies, and shakers providing marking the rhythm all the time, and then like a tambourine, what's called a tamborim in Portuguese in Brazil, which is a little drum without any jingles, so that's a very high sound. So one of the things that's beautiful about the Pandaro, as far as, for instance, playing samba, here's a samba. Kind of a march, a swinging sort of a march. 1, 2, doom, doom, doom. In a bigger context, you would have the bass drum. Here I have my zabumba. Actually, it's my teacher's zabumba that he gave me. I'll tell you more about my teachers in a second. But the zabumba here, providing the heartbeat, the foundation of a rhythm, that like the samba. Doom, 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 doom. For example, but the Pandaro can make that tone by striking it with your thumb or your fingers to get a ringing bass sound, like that. In the samba, you would also have a shaker, providing that, marking that subdivision, that with a ganza like that, or with a caxixe, another Brazilian shaker. But the Pandaro can do that too. The Pandaro has these jingles, and so you have this. So suddenly you have 2 instruments at the same time. And then you add, let's say you had your tamborim and you were playing emphasis, marking the rhythm with different shots, different patterns, with a much higher sound. You also have that on this instrument. So by adding those possibilities together, you're able to play with a very small instrument a very big sound that marks all of the things you would have in a bigger band. So You have your shaker. And the bass sound, the bass drum. And the highs. There's the low one, along with the shaker going on. But also the accent there. All right, so you've got low, medium, high. You have, as it were, you can contain much of what you can do with a big band in a small instrument. I think that that's why it's so versatile, so beloved, and such a powerful ambassador of diverse Brazilian cultures, because it has that possibility. So you can take, if there's a regional music that normally you would play with different instruments, not just a solo thing, you can actually play it solo, a version of, because you have so much vocabulary on the instrument.
We actually have a question. Where can you get a Pandaro here in Canada?
Great question. It's possible to buy. Here, I've got a whole litany of things to show you. So this is an instrument that I bought, I believe, from someone who was in Toronto, but it was a company, I don't know if it still exists, but that did mail order and brought these instruments from Recife in Brazil, which is where my teacher is from in Pernambuco, Brazil. So at the higher end or the more elaborate end, you could find someone, there are many websites and importers who will sell an instrument like this online these days, for sure. But if you want to learn the technique, you don't have to, like a Pandaro is a specific tambourine. But for instance, I got this tambourine for $10 at the Folklore Center downtown in Halifax, which is just a simple tambourine with jingles, and you can use it to practice the same techniques before you figure out which Pandaro to get. You know, obviously it's a different sound, but possibility. If $10 is maybe more than you want to invest in your Pandaro career, I got this one for like $2.50 or $3 at the dollar store somewhere, and you can practice the very same techniques on that. But maybe you don't want to invest like a couple bucks. Maybe you have a Frisbee around and you kind of want to check out the techniques a little bit, but this is also a good practice tool if someone's taking a nap upstairs or you're on tour on an airplane and you want to practice a little bit. Maybe you don't play Frisbee and you just want to go to your kitchen and get a pie plate. Sorry, Maisie. So pretty accessible to practice on many. You know, you don't necessarily have to have the drum, but all of that being said, if you want advice, I love this instrument. I feel like it's one of my obligations is to introduce people to it, to tell them about the culture, where it comes from, and the music and the history that it represents. So if you want to send me a message at any point, just get in touch. I have a bunch of these that if you really can't find any other option, I'll bike one of these to your house if you live in Halifax and share one of these with you. I have a whole pile. So my idea is that everyone should be able to play. Whether you have a Pandaro or not, it should be accessible. So definitely, if you need more advice than that, just send me a message, let me know.
Great.
Yeah, that's one thing that I wanted to share, like the technique for sure. It's an interesting thing with both hands that we do. And you could apply it to different instruments. Like the one tambourine I didn't show you, the one Pandaro that I didn't show you was this one, which just has a nylon skin instead of the leather skin. for a totally different tone. Which you might use differently, a different context. For instance, if you did have a bunch of bass drums, you might use an instrument that didn't interfere or participate in the same frequency range. You know, you could stay up here playing, marking higher sounds while the bass drum was taking care of its work down there. So yeah, different applications, different situations.
In terms of players, like, and like some recordings, is there anything that you can recommend in terms of sort of like leading Pandaro players from?
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is a good segue to talk about some of my teachers, because every student needs a teacher. I mean, and that's the way to get the most deeply into any subject. We all know that. So you have a mentor, someone who inspires you, and someone who you can trust to transmit the information that you need to know about any subject, for instance. So in my experience, I didn't play any percussion. I played guitar and had a great guitar teacher for my whole childhood, whose name is Ross Anderson. Ross, if you're listening, thanks for all of that mentorship. Ross Anderson, great Halifax guitarist that you should definitely know about if you don't know. So I played a lot of guitar as a kid, but never any percussion. And then I met my teachers who moved here from Brazil, from Recife. In fact, from Recife and Olinda in Pernambuco in Brazil. His name is Mestre Azeitona, Mário Sérgio Moreno da Silva, and also Professora Paula Virginia Siqueira da Silva. So Paula and Azeitona moved to Halifax, and they became great mentors, great friends, and great teachers to me, and introduced me to the Pandaro. So I think we might be able to pull up some pictures of Mestre Azeitona and Paula as well. But I can remember, I was thinking about this, and so vividly, I can remember the first time I saw Azeitona playing the Pandaro in this certain way. I can remember what he was playing and how he was playing it. I can see it in my mind's eye. And I remember what I thought in response. I thought, I need to do that. And I've talked to lots of other musicians about their experience, of how they got into what they do, and often there's a similar experience, like a crystalline moment. You see someone doing a thing and you love the way it looks and sounds and feels, and you think to yourself, if there's a way for me to do that, I want to do that. So I remember he was playing this, and this hand was like rolling so freely, and it was obviously part of a really joyful musical moment. I remember thinking, like, I need to be close to this music. I need to understand, I need to learn from this person how to do that thing and what it's about. So, so to my teachers, Paula and Azeitona, in case you're watching, muito obrigado de coração pela oportunidade de fazer parte dessa música, essa lineagem. And maybe a nice segue to that conversation about responsibility, or like lineage. Like, I grew up in Halifax. I didn't grow up speaking Portuguese, knowing anything about Brazil, playing any percussion, understanding the history, like the deep and fraught history of Brazil, its colonization by the Portuguese, its participation in the system of transatlantic slavery that brought many African people as hostages to the Brazilian territory. I didn't know any of that history, and I didn't know anything about the music that came out of that history. So it was from meeting Paula and Azeitona that I was a teacher invites you into the knowledge of a lineage. So I really owe a debt of gratitude to those guys for being open and generous and very, very, also demanding teachers, making me understand how important it is, but also making the door feel wide open. So I think that it's really important to acknowledge your lineage, like your immediate teachers, but also to think about their teachers' teachers and the teachers' 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 teachers, and in a way that's a little more historical, less personal, and to understand that this isn't just something that I do by myself. It's a lineage that there's incredible work, musical work, creating these musical things that I benefit from by being here at this place. It's a great privilege that I have to play this music, to have an opportunity to meet my teachers. And so all respect goes to the creators of the culture, to the lineage itself, and to my teachers and influences, for sure. And something that I remember Azeitona saying is like, no matter who you have as a teacher for a day, you get to have their influence for life, sort of. So there's many other Pandaro players I can recommend that I've been lucky enough to have as teachers. Percussionist in Olinda called Tony Boy. I remember doing some lessons with him way back when I was visiting Brazil. A good friend of mine, Keita Ogawa, did some lessons with Keita. Keita's an amazing percussionist. He's originally from Japan, but he lives in New York and plays with bands like Snarky Puppy and many others. Also Marcelo Volofsky, another great, an Argentinian percussionist in New York. Thanks, Marcelo. And also I did some studying with Sergio Krakowski, who's a percussionist from Rio de Janeiro, a Brazilian guy living in New York City who has an amazing fluency on the Pandaro. So he's a modern Pandaro player that if you want to see the possibilities of the instrument truly, he's someone who is exceptional. So Sergio Krakowski. If you are interested in any of those names, then I can tell you more about it. Just send me a message too. I would be very happy to send you links or share details about this music with anybody. Another great one of Sergio Krakowski's teachers and part of the lineage of Pandaro playing in Rio that he's part of is Marco Suzano, who's quite a famous, people call him the king of the Pandero. He's someone who really, in a way, modernized the technique. So if you're looking for beautiful Pandaro examples, Marco Suzano would be another example, someone to listen to from the source, for sure.
Excellent.
How are you? Excellent. I just needed a little feedback. Cool. So maybe one more word about the history of the thing, and then we can talk about some techniques, some actual, like how you make the sounds on the drum, if that makes sense to you all. I mentioned it briefly, but the history of Brazil is a history of colonization. The history of Brazilian music reflects that very fraught colonial history. So much of Brazilian music has a deep African influence because of the presence of enslaved African people in Brazil. And there's also this stream of influence from the European power that settled there, the Portuguese, and that connection to Europe and that continent. So this instrument actually came to Brazil via Portugal and has roots in Arabic music. And the tambourine is just such a great form that many cultures have passed and transmitted this instrument. It travels very well. It's so small. You can, if you were a person traveling from one place to another, you just put it in your back, or actually walk down the street playing. I remember I was so in love with it I am so in love with it that sometimes I'm going places and I'm just practicing along the way. My neighbors know that I'm coming because I'm just practicing techniques walking along the street. So it's a very portable, transmittable instrument in that way. So this is an instrument in Indian music called the kanjira, or a rick. Arabic music has an instrument that's played more like this that I don't know how to do, but the same frame drum with jingles. So through that pathway, Brazil received this instrument because the Portuguese had come to settle there. But the music that's played on this instrument is largely Afro-Brazilian. So the actual, like the intellectual property of the music is largely Afro-Brazilian, like created out of African roots in Brazil. Like samba, Capoeira, which is one of my main contacts with Brazilian music, which is an Afro-Brazilian ritual martial art that has music as part of the martial art. But all of these cultural manifestations in Brazil that include dance and music, like coco, maracatu, samba, samba de roda, maculele, like all without any exception have African roots. So in a way, this is sort of emblematic of that colonial crucible that created some of the cultural stuff that's there. So the pandero, you can't just play it and think, oh, this sounds cool. You have to play it and understand that this connects us to that history. And so you have to think about the violence that colonialism was predicated on. You have to think about the very, very violent history of slavery and what that meant to people. And largely musical and cultural stuff in Brazil represented a resistance to the oppression. Often African cultural manifestations were explicitly repressed in Brazil as an attempt to try to maintain the colonial domination, so that people would actually play this music like it was like, I don't know, it's a lifeline, you know, it's like a chance, a cultural resistance. Like you make space with music, you create something beautiful and thereby resist this dehumanization of an oppression like that you find in a colonial situation. So it's, you know, you don't just pick it up and like, you can. But if you get deeper into it, you just have this obligation to understand some of the context. If I, as, you know, like this white Canadian, well-off suburban Nova Scotian guy, took this, practiced a lot and got good at it, but never talked about the roots, never learned about the details of how it came to be, that would be very dangerous. And, you know, I would be putting myself at the center of it instead of my teachers and the people who genuinely are at the center of this culture. So, yeah, all respect goes to the teachers and the ancestors and the lineage that I'm very grateful to be participating in, only through the extreme power of their force of will, their brilliance, their cultural survival. So, kind of heavy to say the least.
Mm-hmm. I think it's important, and I think that's something that it's important to talk about in terms of music and culture in general. And like, you know, there's a lot of discussion about like cultural appropriation within music, and I think that you've like really outlined about like what sort of separates that from like of just picking up an instrument and like having an understanding of it is like super important.
Yeah, I mean, because it's so like in this time that we've been in this pandemic, all of us have had this I bet everyone watching has retreated or returned to music. Like your favorite albums, music has brought you through this time, which has been confusing and uncertain and sad and challenging. So we realize how potent that musical force is. So it's important to recognize it as not divorced from its roots, because the roots of the thing is everything. And it's not just Brazilian music, it's not just this instrument. Like I play jazz music, blues and other Black American music. We could be having the same conversation about all that popular music, hip hop. I mean, like every musical manifestation is something that demands at a certain point that you understand its roots and you honor those roots. Because maybe the last thing I'll say on the subject is this analogy that came to my mind. Because as musicians, all of my teachers have always been wide open with even with cultural music that's, you know, very regional. I've never been told by my teacher, like when they invited me to see a technique or learn a rhythm or participate in a ritual, if that was the case, they were always like, no, here, welcome, like they were wide open. It's like they invited me into their house, so to speak. I'm not, like, it's not my home, but they invited me in. But if I go into someone's home, I have to be on my best behavior. I don't just act like I'm in my house. So, you know, I'm pretty sure they'll offer me a glass of water, but I don't just go take it for myself, you know? And I have to spend a special amount of energy on making sure that I don't overstay my welcome, that I don't go into rooms that I'm not welcome in. And everyone's had someone in their house who, you know, you say, oh, would you like another drink? But what you really mean is, it's time for you to go, you know? And and it's the guest's responsibility to say, you know what, I've taken too much of your time. I'll talk to you later. We'll talk more about this another time. So I think that music like this, you should maybe carry that mentality. If you are in someone else's house, they invited you in, so you're welcome, but you still have to be careful not to overstay your welcome or to make a fool of yourself and put undue pressure and like force them to be the bad guy, you know? Don't put your teachers in that position. So always conduct yourself with the maximum possible respect so that it's not their responsibility to teach you how to respect the culture. Anyway, I like the house analogy. So, you know, you're welcome to come in, but, you know, be on your best behavior. So, you know, for me, that's meant like study Portuguese so that I like try to speak Portuguese as fluently as possible so that I can talk to my teachers in their language, so that I can get as close to the culture as possible and constantly think about issues of cultural appropriation because I want to do right by it. And I want to do what I can to share it. If you want to talk more about that, definitely send me a message. I would love to explore those ideas. I'm sure there's lots of musicians who are juggling those same questions these days. And if you're not, you should. So please, yeah, you have to do that work if you want to do this work. But let's get down to some of this work so I can show you how to play your pie plate at home in this way. The instrument has two kind of engines. This engine and this engine. And it's sometimes you use more one or more of the other, but it's by combining these two things that we generate this tone. Yeah, do you want to?
I'll take a pie plate.
And my lovely assistant Andrew Jackson, talented musician, but he's never played a pie plate before. So this is how you would do it. You would hold it with your thumb on the top for balance. Sometimes with an instrument, you might need to balance your fingers on the bottom, but you get a better sound from the pie plate if you don't put any fingers on the skin, because it'll muffle it. That looks good. So on the drum, you have, remember we talked about low and medium and high timbre, right? We have low, medium, and high, those sounds. So you can create those, let's start. You can create those with either this part of your hand below the center or this part of your hand above the center because we're moving it back and forth, right? So what you want is all the sounds in all the directions. So here, Andrew, get your pie plate just going, kind of like, yeah. Your arm is an amazing thing. Arms are amazing. They have two bones that allow them to rotate like this, like in a doorknob opening kind of motion. So that's the motion that fuels this jingling. Yeah. And you kind of want to have it flat, not up like this, and not like you're about to throw a frisbee, but with your arm kind of down the center of the drum almost. So let's get the low sound with the bottom of your hand. It's your thumb. Perfect. Andrew's is going to sound a bit different than mine. So it's just your thumb hits and bounces off. Yeah. So it could be like this, and you would hit with your thumb when the drum was coming towards you. So boom. Yeah, nice tone. That's good. So with your thumb, you could get that medium sound, the muffled sound, by hitting in the middle of the thing and leaving your thumb there. Yeah, so you've got kind of, on my drum, it sounds like boom and pop. Yeah, Andrew's sounds more like rang and tongue, something like that. Yeah, so here, I'll do one and you do one. So it's like boom, pop. Yeah. Yeah, nice. So those are two tones that you can add to the, right? I'll just, this example, I've got this going on. And just with what we did, nice. So that was with, remember I said we want to use the upper and lower part of your hand for it? And you can interrupt me with a question at any time. On the upper side of your hand, it's either the same thing we did with our thumb, but with the tips of these three fingers mostly. Exactly. And on the drum, on the pie plate, if the thumb is a little easier to get this tone. So if you want to make sure, the idea is to have the same tone on both sides. So you can try to create the same sound. Yeah, the same sound with your thumb and your fingers. Yeah, nice. So, if you had an afternoon and you really were ambitious and you wanted to really improve your Pandaro playing, you could spend a little time and try to get those sounds to be as much the same tone as possible. And then we'll do the same thing, those fingers in the middle of the drum. Just right in the exact center. And try not to get the ring.
It's resonant.
It's a very, very good sounding pie plate, that's why. Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, kind of like more percussive than ringing. And so that either of those tones will happen when the drum's coming towards you like this. So I'll show Andrew how to play the pie plate with this exercise. So you can just go like, right? This is going doom, doom, 1, 2, 1, 2, away, forward, and when it comes forward, bass, middle. Woo! Yeah, nice. So now, if you think about the thumb or the heel of your hand, the thumb gives you the boom and the pop, and the fingers give you the boom and the pop. So now you can, regardless, let's say we're playing a pattern that's like this. Very simple, but this means that without changing my left hand, I could get the boom, like a syncopated boom, right? So like I could go. Yeah, Andrew. Super nice. So here's one thing that I'll add to Andrew's pie technique, which is that when you're getting the chicky, when you do this without your left or your right hand, you don't get much tone, as you can hear. Very subtle. It's there, but it's very subtle. So actually, what we do to make that chicky, that high marcation of the sound a little bit stronger is you put your hand in a sort of shape there. And so that actually will work on a pie plate. You could use a hardcover book, whatever. Frisbee, whatever you have with you. And so this is kind of a square corner. You put this across there on the pie plate. This hand kind of marks the middle of the drum. You kind of have this hinge and this straight line that gives you an even rocking back and forth. So now actually here on the pie plate, you can get the chicky chicky as well as the boom and the pop. So it's like chicky chicky.
Do you find you build up some like calluses or like
there's
strength there?
Yeah, like any instrument definitely, it changes your body a little bit. So like a little callus. Often, for instance, for this, you want to cut your fingernails a little bit so that you don't like boom, put them through the skin of the drum. And also, so now that we've done the chicky chicky, let's just do this for all of you practicing at home and for Andrew. You could do this and whatever, put on a movie and watch it or just stare out the window. You can do some practice you can do robotically like that. Maisie's keeping time with her tail. Good girl. Nice. Yeah, Maisie, you're killing it. So we'll just mark that same rhythm. We'll just go boom, boom. Yeah, relax your hand a little, Andrew. Just, yeah. A little more like, just not like a forced hook, but put it flat and then just relax it a bit, that kind of thing. And actually you see these 3 fingers fall almost right on the rim of the drum. And that way you'll get just the chicky chicky sound. You won't get too much boom. You won't get as much of that because you can clean it up and get just like, instead of it getting kind of woofy, like if you went, still get the chicky chicky, but it's overwhelmed by some of the whoa, 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 whoa. Give it to us.
I'll get you to slower though.
Yeah. Yeah, Maisie's tempo. Beautiful. It's
Work in progress.
Yeah. Same thing. That's really I think that's the part of this technique that's so intoxicating is that you've got this amazing, beautiful, fluid motion going on, which almost feels like a second musician who's just there, creating that pattern for you to add emphasis over top of. So here, this is fun thing to add. We've got bass drum with our thumb and our fingers. We've got the snare drum, you could say, with our thumb and our fingers. Yes, give me the bass drum. There you go. We've got the hi-hat, sort of, if you're thinking about this as a drum set. Sounding good.
I can't go that fast.
Any tempo is good. That's great. It's looking good. So here, we need a drum roll, especially if you think about it as a contained drum set. So here, you just use this. Use one finger, almost a right angle to this skin. I don't know exactly where I'm looking. This one. Nice. Oh. That one. This is a multi-camera shoot, people. This finger, very lightly, just bouncing along. Keep your finger unbent, totally straight, rigid. Point it perpendicular to the drum. Keep the finger rigid, and press.
Oh, I've been trying to do this for years. Oh, I did it for a second.
Yes. Yes. It's good to keep it on on a pie plate, the middle still works, but the drum has more tension here than here. So the small, tight bounce, if you go around the edge, is where you want it.
There's definitely a sweet spot.
Totally. The humidity today actually helps. It makes the skin a little stickier. So this is a little easier with more humidity in the air. If it's very dry, it's hard to get. But in the winter, sometimes I'll use a little beeswax maybe if I really want to take advantage of that technique. And then you can
We have a question, sorry to interrupt it.
Yeah.
If you're right-handed, which hand do you hold the pandero with?
Well, I'm right-handed, and I hold the pandero with my left hand.
I'm left-handed, and I'm holding it with my left hand.
Yeah, I think either could work. And in fact, I remember seeing a Seu Jorge concert. Is a great Brazilian musician that you all might remember. He played a bunch of Brazilian versions of David Bowie songs in the Life Aquatic, among other wonderful things. But I remember seeing a show of his. I was in Montreal, and he had some pandero players in his band who did a really amazing solo. But one of them played a ton of stuff with the pandero like this, and you were like, wow, amazing. And then it turns out, his wrong hand, and he just switched it up and did even more amazing stuff.
Now that I'm holding it with my right hand, and I feel like this might be more natural for me, actually.
It's completely up to you. There's no reason. Sometimes if you play, I remember, someone telling me, like, if you learn golf, they don't usually offer you, it's like everyone swings this way. Or if you play field hockey, there's no right and left-handed sticks like in hockey. But the pandero is totally grab it with whichever hand feels the most comfortable. But for me, that's my right hand here. But yeah, there's no wrong answer, I don't think, because both have work to do, So take the coordination you have and develop the coordination you don't have. So yeah, we just made those ingredients. We made bass drum, snare drum, shaker, or in this case, zabumba, kashishi, caixa, and we made all of this vocabulary on this very, very nice little instrument that you can use to make different patterns, Okay, let's play that.
I'm going back to the same.
You can do whatever you want. We'll just do a couple things. Right? Yeah.
Another question, John Van Gert wants to know.
John.
Why do you have tape on the underside of the head?
Good question. Often this sort of a pattern, or sometimes a square, is just an opportunity to tune the skin a little bit and to defeat some of the ringy sort of overtones that you might otherwise get. So it gives you maybe a more muffled bass sound, but that feels more like what you want. Like this has, right now, this skin, I've been traveling with it for a bunch of years, and it's got a really kind of like a bassy sound that I really like. But sometimes with other drums, without that, like this one, for instance, you can hear some overtones. I don't know if it's coming through if it's traveling to the satellites and to your ear, and you can hear it, but it's got some overtones that ring and sometimes kind of like battle each other a bit. So that's the reason for the masking tape on there, is to baffle the drum a little, to get rid of those overtones. Yeah, so we've got these, we've got our bass drum, our snare drum, shaker, and this is how we, play some rhythms. So since we talked about the samba, we could do the samba pattern, because so much of the pandero kind of comes through that. That's often the first rhythm that a teacher would teach you, or that a student would ask to learn, because it's really where you hear the instrument a lot in small samba bands or in bigger groups as well. So we'll just go in samba. It's like doom 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 doom. And there's a long, like a long human tradition of singing rhythms before you play them. In Brazil, for sure, it's like an long history of people, not notating music, but being like, which one do you want to do? Hey, why don't we go, or whatever, singing it. So that's the same thing we do. Why don't we do the same thing here? Like a higher bass sound, like boom, 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 chicoo, boom, chicoo. So that'll be like boom, 1, 2, 3, 4, boom, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah, and what Andrew's doing right there is a great idea. Is just like remove this challenge. Sometimes can be a good thing. Just get boom. So get a good sound. So keep doing that. Even that still implies the swing, like the lilt, the feeling. I'll add the chicky chicky. Yeah, nice. There's one other sound I forgot to describe. You can use your thumb on the top of the head to get a different pitch. So it's like a talking drum or
It's a little harder on the pipe.
the pipe plate, it's not working. But yeah, so then you know, maybe you've seen a talking drum where you add tension to the side and hit it with a crooked stick. Or maybe you can picture like a rototom sound. That's kind of our tool on the Pandaro for making that pitch. So like. Yeah.
There's a question from Jennifer McLeod. You make it look so easy when you drag your finger along the drum surface. Any more tips for that?
It really is such a fun thing. Like I started off talking about joy in music, and this like not only makes me happy because it feels like real life magic. It makes, you know, I teach kids a lot, and when I go to a school to demonstrate some of this stuff, it doesn't matter what else I do, it's that thing that they want to know about. You know, I could do backflips in 4 languages, they don't care. They want to know exactly how to do this. And it actually doesn't take as long as you think. So I'm making it look easy because I've played this instrument for 17 years and have just been addicted to it the whole time and loved it and practiced. But I bet, you know, even if you're watching at home and you don't have a pie plate, you don't have a Frisbee, you could even practice the same thing just on a hard surface, like on the floor, on a desk, on a coffee table.
I think when you told me to keep my finger like straight, like flat, like
Yeah.
and finding that sweet spot really helped me.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't do this before today, so I'm pretty stoked about it.
Yeah. The advice that helps unlock that sound for Jennifer is to not press too hard because it kind of looks magical and exciting. You feel like you want to press hard to get it out of it, but actually a lighter touch will work better, which is, you know, that's good advice for life sometimes. But so don't press too hard. If you press too hard, it's very hard for it to bounce. You know, what you want is this finger to just bounce, the friction to catch it and then release, catch it and release, and that's what actualizes the jingle, sort of. The platinelas, they call this in Portuguese. The platinelas will speak when this sort of, what's it called? What's that word? When it kind of scoots, that's not what I'm looking for, but there's a little like, the tension releases and it just kind of like pops forward. There's a word in my brain I'm not getting just yet, but anyway. So keep this finger rigid, keep it relaxed, and keep it pretty light. Right angle corner, and then the other hint, if it's still hard, you can, if your hand is clean, you can lick it for some moisture that makes it bounce a little more. If your hand is dirty, just breathe on it.
I won't do that.
Yeah, I don't know where, Andrew doesn't know where my pie plate has been, so but yeah, just a little tension like is added, or a little friction is added by breathing on your finger. So I promise you, if you practice for 5 minutes, you'll get it.
Great. We're going to have to wrap up here in a moment, but I just wanted to check and see if there's anything else that you wanted to cover before we bring things to a close.
No, I just wanted to, yeah, maybe I'll just reiterate. Is that good? You want me to wrap it up? Yeah, perfect. Maisie probably wants to walk. Yeah. Thank you, Maisie, for hanging with us this whole time. What an excellent music dog. Maybe this, if you tuned in and you're interested, let this be, the beginning of a conversation. It doesn't have to be the whole conversation. So feel free to get in touch with me if you have any more questions, or if you're really interested, you want advice about stuff. Feel free to reach out. Because the joy of music is really very democratic. It's for everybody. So go and get some, because it makes things better, in my experience. And also the responsibility, on the other hand, of learning about and respecting the tradition is, there's no, that's a very deep responsibility, and it's a privilege to check it out. So do that also. And yeah, let it be maybe this is the beginning of a conversation. Maybe you just want to play a little bit. Maybe this sparks an interest in this drum that you want to pursue for the rest of your life. Maybe this just makes you want to go to YouTube and check out some Brazilian music and learn about the diverse African roots of samba, coco, maracatu, maculele, all this beautiful stuff with a very deep, rich history. So please, that would be great. And maybe as a tribute to my teachers, I'll invite Andrew to play one tune on our way out, but not on the pie plate, but on his pink trombone that he brought with him.
Oh, where did this trombone go?
I just happen to have this pink trombone.
Okay.
Yeah. So for all of my teachers, everyone who has transmitted some of this musical life to me as a thank you, but especially Paula and Azeitona, Mestre Azeitona, Professora Paula, but all of my teachers, my influences, my friends, my bandmates, my students, everyone who inspires me to continue leading this musical life. We'll play this tune. This is, so in the part of Brazil where Paula and Azeitona come from, in Pernambuco, there's a regional music called Frevo, and Frevo is like amped up carnival parade music, and it has a dance that goes with it that we don't have enough space here for us to demonstrate, but it's like very acrobatic, joyous, high energy. So we'll play, this is the classic of the Frevo repertoire from Pernambuco, from Olinda in Pernambuco in Brazil, dedicated to Azeitona and Paula and all my influences, and to all the mestres of music in Pernambuco and the culture of Brazil in general. So we'll play this one. It's called Vassourinha.
Big round of virtual applause for Ross Burns. Yeah, cue the sounds. All right, thanks so much, Ross. We want to thank everyone for tuning in and asking all your great questions. Make sure that you tune in next week. Next Tuesday, we've got our Canadian jazz interviews. And then we're going to have another great percussion workshop, checking out a different region with African drumming with Dr. Henry Bishop. He's given his fantastic workshop at the festival a bunch of times, and it's always really informative and great. So you're going to want to tune into that next Thursday. And you can check out all of the great events we've got coming up, halifaxjazzfestival.ca. And we'll see you next time. Thanks so much to all of our sponsors. And thanks so much for Ben for working the cameras and sound. And we'll see you next time. Thanks.
Brings us together, even when we're apart. That's why we support Canadian musicians, festivals, and award shows. It's just one of the ways TD's Ready commitment helps build a more inclusive tomorrow.